And then there were 13. That's the number of incumbent MPs who will not be running again under the NDP banner this fall. BC NDP Murray Rankin announced his decision to bow out before the 2019 campaign yesterday. And today, former leadership hopeful and the party's Democratic reform critic Nathan Cullen announced his decision not to run. And Mr. Cullen joins me now via FaceTime from Smithers, BC. Hi, nice to see you. Thank you for your time.
Not a problem. My pleasure, Vashi.
So why now?
Wow. I guess the simple answer is the best one. It was time. 15 years, 5 elections, as you mentioned. A leadership bid wasn't successful, but was a lot of fun. And it just felt like it was right. And I kind of made this decision some time ago, and it was all about timing. And I think the timing actually today is good. I didn't realize I was the 13th. That might be unlucky for me. But that Jagmeet Singh getting a seat in the House, mixed that with the particular trouble that Mr. Trudeau is facing. I think the prospects for the NDP are better than they were looking even a month ago. And this is just the right time. I represent a place, as you know, very far away from the capital in northwestern British Columbia, an amazing and beautiful place, and also a riding that requires a lot of effort, a lot of time. It's a little bit bigger than Poland for those cartographers at home. And it's been an incredibly and unexpected, joyous adventure in politics. But this was never meant to be a career. I never thought of a life in politics. And I'm just grateful to all the people that have supported and helped me out over so many years and so many great campaigns and battles.
I know you heard that number 13 you were mentioning, if it's unlucky for you. Is it unlucky for the NDP? There's going to be a lot, that there's going to be a lot of people saying, wow, that's a lot of MPs choosing not to run. If the prospects are so good as you say, why not stick around?
Well, for me, the prospects of how we're doing in the next campaign didn't really factor a lot into it. I really do believe we're in a good spot and getting better, let's put it that way. If I look to my colleagues who have left, many of them are either in the circumstance I am. They've served quite a while in elected office, either federally or at other levels. They put a bunch of time in, and it's time to do something else, or they're at retirement, or some have told me past retirement age. And so it's unfortunate, I think, just in terms of the narrative that had built up, as people like to call it, around Jagmeet's leadership. But I do really believe a lot of it is circumstantial timing. The pundits, of course, are going to say, oh, this is all very telling, but I don't know. I was talking to a friend today, and we say we shouldn't make our politics personal. And I agree with that when we're attacking people in politics for things that are policy issues and we make it personal. But politics also is personal. It's people and their lives and families. And I got a couple little boys that, I'd like to see a little bit more than I do right now.
I'm sure they'd like to see you more, too. I take your point about the narrative developing. There are now five MPs in BC, NDP MPs, and 5 in Quebec. Are you worried strategically that provides an opening for the Liberals?
No, in the sense that Jagmeet, of course, winning a seat in British Columbia, and I think doing very well. His margin was 5 times greater than that of Kennedy Stewart, who was the previous MP. So that shows good connection, not just to that riding, but hopefully across British Columbia. Do we have work to do in Quebec? Yes, regardless if all of our Quebec MPs were running or half or whatever, we have a bunch of work to do there. And I think Mr. Singh's appeal to Quebecers, particularly as they may, like many Canadians, maybe are seeing some of the shine come off Mr. Trudeau, that the love affair was a mile wide, but maybe an inch deep. And the whole Jody Wilson-Raybould scandal that continues to go on, I think will remind Quebecers of the Liberal Party that they threw from office last time. And if Mr. Singh can continue to offer himself as an authentic and unapologetically progressive option, then I think there's nothing but upside for us in both those provinces and other places as well.
And just quickly, I have a few seconds left. I know that you're not running in the next election, but will you be sticking around Ottawa? Will you be here to the end of the session?
Oh yes, in terms of the rest of the work, I promised myself that I would finish well, and I think that's what this place deserves. It deserves nothing but full effort. In terms of sticking around after that, I live on the West Coast. I like the West Coast, and so does my family. You'll forgive me if I want to head back here.
Yeah, all is forgiven. All right, thank you, Mr. Cullen. Really appreciate you making time for us.
Thanks, Vashi.
And let's bring back the Power Panel to talk about this. Marty Patriquin, Marie Vastel, Marika Walsh, and Paul Wells. Paul, how big of a blow to the NDP is this?
He said that pundits will say this is significant, and he was not wrong. look.
How can you not?
Jagmeet Singh has been an elected MP for less than a week, and 2 more MPs have said they're not going to run again. He has all the room in the world. At one point, when Stephen Harper was the new leader of the Canadian Alliance, and the polls were just lousy, and they got worse for a minute, we asked Harper what to say about that, and he said, "Well, our room to grow has risen." Jagmeet Singh has all the room to grow in the world, and he has now a few minutes a day when Parliament's in session to make his case. But there doesn't seem to be a wave of excitement among New Democrats at the news that he will be joining them in Ottawa. I wondered whether there'd be signs of an organized attempt to force him out with a wave of resignations. I don't think that's what this is. I think the party is willing to let Mr. Singh make his case, but they're not. They don't seem to feel revitalized by the good news from the by-election the other night.
Marie, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I find it funny that they keep saying all these people, most of these people have legitimate reasons, retirement, Anne Quash is pregnant with her 2nd child, legitimate reasons not to run again, but presumably retirement doesn't seem so urgent when you're contemplating a limousine versus staying in the backbenches of Parliament, right? I think this is obviously linked to how they are doing in the polls and the perspectives for the next election. When Hannah Thibodeau had this story about Plan B, Plan C, Plan D in case Jagmeet lost the by-election on Monday, I asked Nathan Cullen, so what do you think about the fact that they're Plan B? And he said, no, not now. And I said, not never. And he said, never say never. I don't think we should exclude seeing Mr. Cullen come back when the fortunes of the NDP are better. He did really well in the leadership race against Mulcair. He surprised everyone by being 3rd. People thought he was super charismatic, interesting. I don't think it's over for him. I think it's a big loss for the NDP because he has experience, and Mr. Singh doesn't necessarily know all of the federal files and all of the traditional positions of the NDP. And that's important when you don't want to take the wrong position and cause frustrations in caucus, as he has done in the past few months. Mr. Cullen is someone that could have had that experience and knowledge, also given that the staff around Mr. Singh is also not long-time federal staffers. And he's also very well known. Going into a campaign with a leader that is not that well known, he could have given them a good boost as a candidate of that team.
Marty, what do you think?
Andrew Coyne, I have to give credit's due. Andrew Coyne made a very good point. He listed off the list of names: Mulcair, Cullen, Leslie, Harris, Comartin, Nash, and Rankin. What a great NDP front bench that would have been, and obviously that's not to be. Look, I agree with everything that Marie just said. Just on the voracious politician that Nathan Cullen is, that riding that he's describing that is about the size of Poland is also fairly small C conservative. And if you look at the results of his elections, I mean, he eked out. I looked at the results today. He eked out a victory in 2004 against the Conservatives. 2015, he was more than double. That just goes to show the type and the caliber of politician that they're losing in the coming election. The other thing too, you mentioned Quebec in there and was very rosy about Quebec. Singh's got a lot of issues here in Quebec, and they came up a little bit in Outremont in the by-election that just went by. We are going to get into the whole, not to say reasonable accommodations, but the fact that he is a brown man wearing a turban. That is going to be an issue. That it wasn't an issue with Mulcair, it wasn't an issue with Jack Layton.
Marika, to play devil's advocate, though, he did have a decisive win, like Nathan Cullen said, in that by-election. A lot of people around this table many times would say we're talking about the possibility of him losing. He didn't lose. He won by a bigger margin than Kennedy Stewart did in the previous election. A lot of people behind the scenes at the NDP were pointing me in the direction that night of saying, like, look, everyone's talking about, oh, he doesn't have a shot in Quebec or this kind of stuff, but maybe the target voter has changed for the NDP, right? And that they are looking strategically at where to build on that momentum.
I think that's exactly it, and I think Paul in some ways touched on it when you said that he's not rallying grassroots NDP, but he is rallying a different type of person to the NDP. Something that really confuses me about Jagmeet Singh's trajectory since becoming leader is that when I was still on the East Coast in Halifax, on a Sunday night in the dead of winter. He had such a big crowd that it was over capacity. They had speakers outside. People lined up around the block to see Jagmeet sing in Halifax. Like, that is not, Mulcair was at this exact same venue and had about 30 people there 2 years earlier. So, you know, he obviously has something. He has a draw. He has this magnetism. And for some reason, it has not translated into his tenureship in leaders. And I don't know if that will change now. Maybe he's getting a second chance at a first impression. But certainly there is something that he draws. It's just that it seems out of step with the traditional NDP.
Right.
Yeah, but about that point, I agree that perhaps they're courting different voters. But when you talk to New Democrats in Quebec, at least, they say actually maybe the NDP is going back to their old ways of wanting to be the moral conscience of Parliament and not necessarily wanting power. You can go for another vote, but does that give you more votes? That's unclear to a lot of New Democrats.
Yes,
Well, it'll be interesting, Paul, to see how he does in the House of Commons and what kind of effect that has on caucus. And we know the infamous events we've seen where somebody behind him is telling him, you know, what the position of the party is. But again, lots of people benefit from being underestimated.
Yeah. A colleague reminded me that the reason the McGill NDP club sent about 15 members of Parliament after the 2011 election was that before the 2011 election began, nobody gave Jack Layton and Tom Mulcair and the NDP a snowball's chance of picking up any seats in Quebec. Now, they had spent a decade building towards that result, and Jagmeet Singh just hasn't. But campaigns are surprising times. And he is young and dynamic and speaks with a lot of conviction, and now has 8 months to speak with more information about some of these files and about, you're right, the history of the party and the culture of the party. But I'm not counting anyone out. You know, Max Bernier could win 20 seats.
It's also not his first time in a legislature, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
He knows what it's like to stand across from government, to challenge government. Yes, it's a bigger venue now. Yes, there's a bigger audience, but it's not his first rodeo.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we will see. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to the Power Panel. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks to Marika Walsh, Marty Patrick, Marie Vastel, and Paul Wells.